Hi everyone, welcome to my week 6 demo. So my progress is split into two main sections. Number one, I've primarily been working on the UI of my application. So as a refresher, it's a Next.js UI with a Flask backend. And number two, I've also been developing Docker images for both sections of this application. So a Docker image for the Next.js side and a Docker image for the Flask backend. For the actual I wanted to make the UI as simple as possible, especially since patients will be using this, so I don't want to overcomplicate things. And number two, I think one of the difficulties that I faced in this week was building those Docker images. And I'm lucky that I allocated myself 2 weeks. So hopefully by the end of next week, I'll kind of figure out some of the issues that I've been facing using Docker. And before I move on to the plugins and their advantages, I wanted to give you a little bit of an insight as to what my UI looks like. As you can see here, you have your instructions, and you have your query box, and then you just click submit to get a response. One of the biggest problems that I'm still having right now is the latency and the time it's taking to actually generate a response. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, I think the complexity of the pipeline itself, utilizing RAG, I think it's slowing down the performance of the pipeline. Also, I think that the model itself may be um, it just may be too big of a parameter model. So maybe using a smaller model could help me generate my response faster. I think it's important to realize though that the responses here are good. It's just it takes a lot of time. So I want to make sure that I find this right balance between speed and quality. And that's something that I think I'm going to work on next week alongside the Docker images. So now going over plugins and functions, I want to go over some pros and cons. Some pros obviously are that you can incorporate new features into your model without having to do that from scratch. I think leveraging third-party community resources and plugins that have already been made is a wonderful idea because it speeds up the development process, especially for smaller applications like this, and for bigger applications once in the industry. However, that does come with some cons. I think the biggest one obviously is security risk because you're trusting a third party organization or their plugin into your application. And that can cause some problems in the future if you're not careful. And it's also hard to debug. I think it's easy when you're creating your own application to create statements for yourself to see where exactly an issue is happening in your workflow. But since this is a plugin, it's much more difficult to pinpoint what error you're facing in the overall pipeline, which can cause some issues. All in all, I think that plugins for my particular application, I didn't really have to use too much because mine's a relatively simple application. But I think if there was any need, I would definitely use a plugin just to speed things up. Thank you.